Over the past 2 days, the NATO meetings are what I would call a perfect red pill moment to go out and actually change leftists' minds. Literally, in the past 2 days, the mainstream media has twisted the truth 180 degrees. These past NATO meetings are a perfect example of how the mainstream media twists and lies about events to push their narrative over the truth. The mainstream media narrative, the consistent narrative they've had now for over 2 years, that Donald Trump is a puppet working for Vladimir Putin, was in complete overdrive yesterday. Trump said that NATO nations need to increase defense spending, which will make NATO a much stronger military, and for Germany and other EU countries to not open up pipelines directly from Russia to receive vast amounts of energy, opening up these countries to future dependence on Russia. Both of these statements are completely true and directly conflict with Russian interests. Literally, Trump called for making the NATO army stronger and to not buy energy to open up dependence on Russia. This somehow was twisted around so much by the mainstream media, especially on CNN and I dare to say MSNBC, the complete propagandist network, that they actually came out and stated as fact that Trump was working for Russia and Putin. And unfortunately, many of their followers believe them. How on earth can anyone with half a brain think that by demanding NATO increase defense spending, so God forbid there is a war with Russia, NATO has a much more stronger military to defend themselves? And how on earth, by telling the European nations, do not start relying on our enemy for energy? How is doing anything like that helping Russian interests at all? How is that not the opposite of what Russia actually wants? The mainstream media came out yesterday and literally told their followers the opposite of the truth. And somehow, their followers cannot see through this obvious lie. Whenever something obvious as this happens, especially lately, I think of Mike Nificent's brother. Mike Nificent has another YouTube channel, which I really think you should look up. But he did a video on his brother who believes all of this globalist propaganda. He's supposedly a smart, successful guy, but somehow has been brainwashed by the globalists and actually still believes the mainstream media tells the truth. So I hope Mike can bring this obvious twist up to his brother. Have him work it out. If you take the time to explain how the mainstream media has twisted the truth here 180 degrees, literally saying the opposite of the truth. What Trump said was build up your armies to make NATO militarily stronger. And do not open up avenues that will give any leverage to Russia in the future over NATO countries. And somehow the mainstream media has turned this into Trump is a puppet and works for Russia. Complete lies. This is what the mainstream media has pushed for 2 straight days. Complete lies. How can any intelligent person not see this? And this is what the mainstream media does every day. They twist all stories into their narratives. Every single one. They never produce a story that has both sides, or worse, all sides of every story. That's a journalist's responsibility, to produce all sides of every given story. They never do that. It is just more obvious here because they twisted the truth 180 degrees. And when people can slow down and actually just think for themselves, especially about complete lies like we see here, they actually open some people's eyes on the left. And then they can go back and clearly see that this is what the mainstream media does with everything. This is why the new walk away movement is gaining so much momentum. Because once you see through the lies just one time, all of the other twists and lies become obvious to you. That is why a red-pilled person actually sees the mainstream media news reports differently than somebody on the left. We automatically notice that all four panelists on there are either leftist Democrat globalists or never Trumpers. Never once do we see an America First panelist to defend Donald Trump's actions, to actually point out all sides of a story. And it honestly starts to piss you off that the mainstream media actually has such low regard for their followers. The mainstream media treats their followers as if they are simpletons. And please don't forget, the original narrative from 3 days ago was that Donald Trump was dismantling NATO. America was going to pull out of NATO. That was the biggest, most obvious lie of all. Have any mainstream media news networks actually put out a retraction or correction to any of these stories about Trump pulling out of NATO or dismantling it? Of course not. But the mainstream media just 3 days ago was putting out many stories. Many reporters came on television and put in print how Donald Trump was going to be dismantling NATO. Not one has retracted that statement, even though just 3 days later it's been proven to be completely false. Unfortunately, the mainstream media has gotten used to their followers not checking facts ever, not remembering what happened just 3 short days ago. Their followers just follow, never think for themselves. And that is the true shame and danger that's happening here in America.